Next, we will stitch the leather. Using wax thread, sewing needles, and scissors. First, we need to determine the length of thread needed for stitching. To measure the wax thread, hold one end and place it on the leather. This represents its single length. Then, measure 10 times that length. Now, cut the wax thread at this length. Next, we will demonstrate how to thread the needles. Since we are using 2 needles at the same time, both ends need to be threaded. Begin by threading one end of the thread through the needle hole, pull out a length of thread, making it equal to the length of the needle. Then, pass the needle through the end of the thread, making sure it goes through the thread loop. Pinch the shorter end of the thread and pull it back, forming a loop. Finally, tighten the longer end to secure the short end of the thread. Repeat this with the other needle. Let me demonstrate this once. Hold the end of the thread, pass it through the eye of the sewing needle, pull it out to some length. Place the thread on the table, and use the needle tip to pierce the thread, ensuring the needle is securely through the thread. Pull the short end backward and tighten the long end, completing the threading. Now, let's begin stitching. Take a piece of leather and demonstrate how to stitch with 2 needles. The first hole at the tip does not need to be stitched. Start by threading one needle through the first hole on one side and the other needle through the first hole on the opposite side. Then, bring both needles together, and make sure the lengths of both threads are equal. Pull the top thread downward, and use your finger to hold it in place. If you prefer to sew upwards first, ensure consistency throughout the process. The first time upwards, the rest of the stitches must follow this direction. If the direction is changed, the stitches will be uneven, so maintain the same direction to achieve neat stitching. Then, we take another needle and pass it through from the back. Then through the hole from the front. Next, pass it through the second hole from the back. Then through the second hole from the other side. Hold the thread you're sewing with using your fingers, and take another thread to pass through the second hole on both sides. This way, while the two threads on the back are crossed, we can see that each hole on the front is stitched twice with the thread, and the two threads are parallel. Continue stitching like this until you reach the second to last hole, and please complete the rest on your own. Now, let's show how to finish the stitch by passing the thread through the second to last hole once more to secure the thread ends. You can then cut the thread at the back. This completes one corner, and the remaining two corners can be finished in the same way. Next, we will stitch around the leather storage box. First, measure the waxed thread by holding one end and placing it along the leather to measure the circumference. Then, extend the waxed thread 4 times its length and cut it. We will stitch this with 2 needles, so both ends need to be threaded. Start stitching by passing one needle through the hole. And bring both needles together. Then pull both threads outward to ensure they are the same length. Now, begin stitching. Insert the top needle into the second hole. Then lower it and press down with your finger. Take the other needle from the back and complete the second hole. Then proceed to the third hole, keeping the same stitching direction. Repeat this process, ensuring the direction remains consistent. Complete the stitching for the rest of the leather yourself. As we approach the end of the stitching, let's show how to finish. When stitching is complete, pass the top needle through the next stitch. and the other needle through the first hole on the opposite side. And then through the second to last stitch. If any crossover occurs, adjust the threads to keep them parallel. Once the stitching is done, cut the thread at the back. This completes the stitching of the leather storage box. Complete the other two leather pieces in the same manner.